for more on the latest developments from last week's G8 summit held in Camp David, I am joined by my colleague Henok Fente of Voice of America's Amharic service. Good afternoon, Henok.
Good afternoon, Shaka.
Well, you attended Friday this very important meeting at the Ronald Reagan building. What were your impressions in as far as the highlights really were concerned?
Shaka, this year's G8 summit was quite different, as you heard from President Obama speaking, in the sense that in the previous G8 summits, African leaders would come to these meetings to ask for more assistance, more aid. This year, it's kind of different because they're talking about partnerships, trade, and in fact, the new Alliance for Africa's Food Security stresses increased private sector involvement in Africa's agriculture to ensure that the continent is able to feed itself, Shaka.
But what about critics who say this is simply talking the talk, really? These people do not, in fact, walk the talk. Because critics will take you back to Gleneagles, Scotland, in the United Kingdom back in 2008 when Tony Blair was Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and he put up a very, very important, impressive commission called the Africa Commission. It was supposed to deliver, Henok. It really never did.
Yes, the same promises were made in L'Aquila in Italy 2 years ago, and this was exactly what African leaders brought to the discussion table. What they said was, we want promises to be fulfilled. We don't want any more empty promises. But at the same time, African leaders have also changed their tone. They're saying we want partnership with the West. We want partnership with the G8. We want trade. We want investments. We are actually people who are able to feed ourselves given the investment opportunities, the assistance, because, you know, most African governments, I've spoken to Tanzania's President Jakaya Kikwete, and a question I put forth to him was that, how will this benefit Africans? Which is a question that you've asked. There were so many pledges that were made throughout the years. What will Africans get from this? He says African governments are poor governments, and there's an ever-increasing number of population. And since resources are limited and stretched, they want the private sector to pitch in. And in fact, not just pitching in, they want the private sector to play a leading role in this. And they want the West and the G8 countries to be able to provide that assistance, guidance, and policy advice as well.
Well, Henok, we saw some clips of Ethiopian Americans demonstrating against the Ethiopian Prime Minister Meles Zenawi. You know as well as I do that back in 2009, when President Obama went to Ghana to address Africa, he talked about how Africa did not need strong men. It needed, well, he said in fact it did not need big men. It actually needed strong institutions. When you look at that, what sort of criteria do you think that President Obama used to arrive at those 4 presidents? In fact, 3 presidents and 1 prime minister, because frankly, the last time I checked, apart from the Ethiopian prime minister, the other ones you could quite say go through a democratic process.
Yes, President Obama also explained why he invited these African leaders. He said that these leaders have a record of improving agriculture for the livelihood of the people. They have been working to improve agriculture and to be able to feed their people. But I do understand, to the question you asked about Ethiopians demonstrating outside the Reagan building, they said we need development. People need to have a voice in their own development. People need democracy in order to have have all the economic progress that the African leaders are saying. So basically they're talking about a bottom-up approach as opposed to policies that are given to them from African leaders or prescribed economic policies that come from Washington, the World Bank, and the IMF. So the demonstrators said, we want freedom, and freedom can give us food security. This was the voice that was heard. I would also like to mention that there were people in support of Ethiopia's Prime Minister Meles Zenawi and the African leaders who were invited. They said these leaders are doing wonderful things in order to reduce poverty and fight hunger in the continent.
What would you characterize as the low light during that particular event that you attended?
The low light was when I asked the question from this public-private sector partnership. A lot of people have concerns that you have corporate giants coming to Africa. The question I put forth to some leaders and participants in the forum was that, will this one benefit Africa, and are African governments ready to have bargaining powers with these companies? As you know, most of these companies have budgets more than 2-3 African countries combined. So when you are in the negotiating business table, can African leaders actually strike a deal that benefits their people? And I did not see that sort of preparation on the side of the African leaders and civil society. That is a low point for me in this G8 discussions.
What about some Ethiopians who have been complaining that, yes, you attended the event, but you sort of underreported it? What is it, in your view, that was very important to them that you did not bring out?
They felt their numbers were downplayed, but as you know, Shaka, once the President of the United States is in a meeting, it's not possible to move around, go out and cover demonstrations outside and come inside. And from a news sense, I give premise to what the President of the United States says more, plus there's also world leaders discussing issues of food security inside. I was covering that, but if they were misrepresented, if they feel they were misrepresented, of course it's because of that. So it wasn't in a way trying to stifle their voice or trying to undermine their political activism.
Thank you very much, Henok, for your insight. Now,
Thank you,
joining
Shaka.
us